very excited to be here. Again, I'm co-founder of Color in Tech and Black Tech Fest, so it's great to see so many people across the days. I'm super excited because I'm here today with my US brother, Damien Hooper Campbell, man of many firsts. First Chief Diversity Officer of Uber, first Chief Diversity Officer at Zoom, and now Chief Impact Officer at StockX. So super excited for you to be here today in London, all the way from the US. I think when we think about the conversation on leaders, it's changed, it's evolved, right? We're now in a space where we expect so much from our leaders, and rightly so. But we're talking about inclusive leadership. So Damien, I'd love to get your take on how do you define inclusive leadership?
Yeah. First of all, hello, what's up, London? What's up, Black Tech Fest? Good to see y'all. Love the energy here. Thank you for having me, Brother D. Inclusive leadership, it's wild. My take on it, for anybody, I think we all, if we are able, watch movies and television shows. And if you've ever been into acting or theater, there's something called the fourth wall, right? There are three walls when you look at theater or television. There's that wall, the one behind, and the one there. And most of the times, the actors only engage with each other. The fourth wall is the audience. And you've seen it. You've seen it on shows like The Office. You've seen it everywhere where the actor looks at you and talks to you. That's one of the best metaphors I have for inclusive leadership. It's when you stop acting like you've got a mask on, you stop just saying the things that people think, that you think people want to hear, and you actually break that fourth wall and let people know that you see them, that they are visible to you. And you know, I gotta be honest, for me, I grew up with grandparents. My grandfather had an 8th grade education, my grandmother a high school education. And I wanna say, like, every night at the dinner table, there was a diverse group of people. There was somebody from the clergy, from the church. There was somebody recovering from drug addiction. There was somebody who my grandfather was trying to employ as a mechanic. And so that showed me a broad variety of people. And I remember my grandfather saying, no matter how much you have, you're never better than another human being. And so I think that really set the stage for my journey around thinking about other people, being exposed to other people, and trying to break that fourth wall in everything that I do.
So really, it's around that lived experience that kind of showed you straight away that it exists. This is possible. It's not something that's not normal.
That's right.
In terms of, just to touch on what you said around, the audience and making sure that inclusive leadership is around bringing everyone, making people feel like they're seen. I bet there's a lot of people here that have leaders that probably don't see them, or there's organizations that necessarily inclusive leadership isn't the norm, isn't embedded in everything. What are some of the tips? What are some of the quick wins that organizations and leaders can think about when they're thinking about being more inclusive?
Yeah, look, I think organizations, we oftentimes get caught up in analysis. We often get caught up in formality. We forget just to be human beings inside of organizations. So one of the things I always advise folks to do is, especially as leaders, or if you're in a position of authority where you're setting policy inside of an organization, or if you have the privilege to influence someone's day inside of an organization, I always say, look at that individual who's reporting to you and ask yourself, if that was your spouse, if that was your mother, if that was your child, how would you want another person to engage with that individual? How loving would you want another person to be with that individual? So part of this is just taking a mindset approach, right? We've forgotten how to love each other in the workplace. I think the second thing that I like to think about is, like, have you asked the people who work for you or work with you what they actually need? We look at a lot of research. We bring in consultants who have academic depth, and we put these things out. and we put it out in the US, and then when it comes time to come over to London, we say, oh, well, this worked in the US. One size should fit all. Well, if you're, especially for those of you who are in global organizations, are you asking the people who you are serving what they actually need? Those are two things. One is a mindset shift. The other one is simple, just asking people what they actually need inside of an organization. Before you do any policy changes, before anything else gets rolled out, if you can do those two simple things, I promise you, number one, you'll set yourself up for success, and the people who you are asking what they need will already appreciate you. Everything else after that is like a cherry on top.
Yeah. In, like, a lot of what you're saying, Damien, sounds simple. It sounds what you'd be taught when you go to school, right? Like, just, you know, what does someone treat someone the way that they'd want to be treated or you'd want to be treated, the golden rule. In terms of, like, we know in reality it doesn't happen like that. Like, there are issues. There's probably a lot of times where those things, you know, being asked doesn't happen. Those things around being empathetic and modeling and thinking about if this was my sibling, if this was my wife, if this was my whoever, it would work. What are some of the things, what are the times that it doesn't work, that you've seen that it's like, this isn't working?
Yeah. Well, one, it's when people think it's a one-size-fits-all. I recall, personally, there was an individual, a previous company, not at StockX, there was an individual who was reporting to me. This individual identifies as a woman. And so as someone who identifies as a man who was in a position of influence, my mindset was, I want to advocate for you. Because I grew up with a single black mom who was on Wall Street in the 80s and heard her war stories of what she went through. You know, I have friends, obviously relatives, and so I'm like, yeah, I'm going to use my privilege in this position of authority to advocate. And so it came time for the promotion process. And what we do know from research is that women and underrepresented minorities don't often self-promote in the same way that men and majority racial and ethnic minorities do. And so I went out of my way, thinking I was being inclusive, to say to this individual, I really want you to go for this. I can see you at this next level of leadership, et cetera. And I kind of saw this like resistance that wasn't overt. It was more of just silence. And I wondered, like, damn, did I do something wrong? And so I kept pushing, and I kept pushing. The mistake I made was I thought I was doing the right thing. I did not say, what am I reading here? And so what turned out was she said to me, Damien, I know that you're an ambitious person. I know this organization is full of ambitious people, but I don't want to be at the next level. The next level comes with a lifestyle that, quite honestly, isn't something I want in my life at this moment in time. And so I think the miss was, again, not asking if this was something that she wanted, making the assumption that I was being an inclusive man by advocating and not reading the room. I think, you know, one of the other things that leaders oftentimes get wrong is this surface level or performative inclusive leadership. Here's what I mean by that. Surface level is, okay, I'm gonna be inclusive by asking you, would you also like a cup of coffee as I'm going to the cafe to get one? Surface level is, hey, would you also like to come to this outing after work? That's like base level stuff, y'all. If we're not doing that at this point in time, we got a problem. So they don't go the next level, and they do things that are surface level in a performative way, meaning you do it because you think someone else is watching. It's about what you do when no one else is watching. And then the last thing I would say, and this is somewhat related to surface level, we have all had failures in our lives. We've had hardships. And when you get into the workplace in particular, we almost are expected to be perfect. So many of us don't want to show up as like, yeah, nah, I'm having a horrible day. Or yeah, nah, my name is Damien, and I almost failed out of Morehouse College because I was busy smoking weed and doing stuff that I wasn't supposed to be doing. Those were things that I used to be ashamed of. But what you realize in the workplace is so many people are coming to work with this mask on The sooner that you as leaders or as colleagues can just be vulnerable about your failures, it is such a huge unlock for people. And so I would just say, make sure you're going beyond the surface level. Your failures actually allow you to connect with people beyond words, but with experiences.
Just on that point, it's a lot around the organizations that you're walking into, right? If it has a lot of the things and the methods and the behaviors that you've been saying, it makes it a lot easier for people to be themselves. What advice would you give to people where then it's not in that environment? How can they push themselves to be themselves?
Yeah, so this is somewhat of a sad note, but I don't mean it for this, but I'm gonna practice what I'm preaching about keeping it real. I've had 3 friends since March of this year. I'm 45, who are between the ages of 40 and 50 die unexpectedly. People I'm very close to. And we do this thing in life when people pass away where we say, oh, life is short. And maybe for the next couple of weeks, you've got this, I'm gonna live it like it's my last day attitude. I have to tell you, as a new father with a daughter who's 2 years old, as somebody who has been close to these losses of life, the thing you gotta ask yourself if you're in the workplace is, nobody wants to work forever. So if you got another 10, 15, 20 years of working, what in the hell is the point of being in an organization where you have to show up with a facade every damn day? And so I'm not sitting here on this stage in this ivory tower telling you all, if it's not an inclusive environment, quit. We don't all have the luxury to do that. What I am saying to you is, look at it, write it down on a piece of paper. What are you willing to give up in terms of your mental wellness, in terms of your happiness, in terms of how you spend over 50% of your day? And what are you willing to let go of? And if you can't leave an organization now where you've been pushing to have folks be more inclusive, you know what? That's okay. Keep doing your damnedest in that organization, but your second job is looking for a new place. And then what I would tell you is, all the things that were not great in the organization you're trying to leave, you need to be so assertive about asking those questions to the next organization when you're interviewing. You can't lose if you ask them if they have gender-inclusive bathrooms or prayer rooms, or do they do outside of work events that include non-alcoholic options, and they get offended. That's their loss. At least before you invest in another organization, you have asked those questions up front.
Around that, it's really the responsibility of yourself, you're saying. It's not the organization, it's for you to really evaluate and assess. In terms of, when you think around the organizations, what are some of those responsibilities? What are the things that you wish more organizations would do?
Okay. All right, I don't know what is in the women's bathroom, okay? But for anybody who has been to the men's bathroom today, can you just, if you're able, raise your hand? Okay, don't be ashamed, raise your hand high. You went to the bathroom. Okay. Organizations, in terms of being inclusive, I have never been to a conference where they not only had lotion. I've been to conferences that have lotion after you wash your hands, because we know that soap strips our hands, especially black folks. And usually they have some kind of cheap lotion that you put it on and 2 seconds later you ashy again. Dion and his team put Palmer's cocoa butter lotion in the restrooms. Organizations think that there need to be these huge initiatives. No, there are brushes in there for people who have hair and want to get, I don't have hair, so it doesn't work. But I've never seen anything like that before, right? And so organizations, number one, you need to be adopting that mindset. There was a study that was done, I think in 2019 by Deloitte, where they asked people about how bias impacts them in the workplace. 40% of people said they will leave a workplace because of bias. Now, there are conscious and unconscious biases. A lot of times when we're not intentionally inclusive, it's being driven by unconscious biases. So organizations need to understand that critical talent, the people who are going to be responsible for helping you make your next billion, will bounce on you. Number one. Number two, organizations have to be thinking about, well, how does this make sense for business? How does this actually make sense for my customer? My customer is the person who's inside of my organization. Number three, I was talking to somebody recently, and they were saying that there's some organizations who say, oh, you know what, we're going to hire women and LGBTQ plus folks and black and brown folks at junior levels and bring them in the organization. We can do that coming out of university or different programs. But then you look at the managerial and leadership levels, and they don't look like those individuals. If you actually want to have an inclusive organization, you need to have an inclusive power level. Great if you have inclusion and diversity at some more of the junior and mid levels, but when people, big dogs, are making decisions that affect the entire culture, the policy, and the ethos of an organization, I want somebody up there who doesn't look like me, because they're going to help me naturally, without even trying to be inclusive, to avoid certain pitfalls. So it's about representation. It's about recognizing you will lose talent. It's also about recognizing your consumer base, hopefully, is a diverse consumer base. If you ain't inclusive with your people internally, there's no way that that's going to yield inclusive outcomes with your consumer base. And over time, you will lose in this competitive landscape.
So what you're saying, Damien, is it goes past, before we used to talk about the business case of diversity. Didn't include a lot of business. It was a lot of, it's good to do, it's the right thing to do.
Right.
You're actually saying that it actually will impact the business both in terms of lost employees, but also possibly lost customers, or customers that you're just not aware of.
Yeah, fam. I mean, think about this like hybrid work environment. Research again shows that some of the people who are dreading going back into the workplace look like the majority of this audience. Because in so many cases in the corporate space, we are the minority, and we oftentimes feel this pressure to put on this facade. That is taxing. It's emotionally taxing. It takes time. It takes energy. When you're at home and you can be on that Zoom and turn that screen off, or when whatever you're wearing below the Zoom screen can be whatever in the heck you want it to be, man, that is so freeing, right? When you don't have to deal with the conversations in between and putting on and the phony colleague who's over there who you know is phony, and you can't keep it real because people might think that you're angry or aggressive. Like, that's all a blessing, right? At the end of the day. So it just is about, like, yeah, I'll leave it there.
I want to get to Q&A because I know there's just a bunch of people that want to ask questions. But before I do, last question. We always talk about, or folks in DEI, we always talk about, our job is to make ourselves so we don't exist, right? It would be great if just, talent do what talent need to do, product think inclusively, marketing, there's no weird kind of marketing campaigns that happen that are just either racist or blind. What are some of the things that you think about in your career, which is so broad? What are you hoping to achieve when you think about 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah. So, one, I have heard that. And in my days as a chief diversity officer, I used to say the same thing. I used to say, I want to work myself out of a job. And I don't knock anybody who says that. That's real, and I get where it comes from. But, folks, every time I think I've seen it all in this world, there's a new acronym that comes out. There's a new challenge that happens in the Middle East. There's an overturning in the United States of Roe v. Wade. There are issues around socioeconomic equity that take place and labor accessibility in France and in the UK. So I don't know that I ever want there not to be an organization within companies that pays attention to the changing trends. We need people who get out ahead of it. I heard a speaker earlier say she likes to get out ahead of what is right now. And so I actually think that the organizations should always be there. What do I kind of define as what I hope to see in 5 years? It's very simple. It's the same name that my wife and I chose for our daughter, which is love. We have so horribly, as a human community, just lost the ability to love each other. This is very basic. We've lost the ability to give each other grace. And oftentimes it comes because we don't understand each other. We should always continue to argue with each other. Discourse is wonderful. Pressure creates diamonds. We should have that conflict. But we don't have to hate each other in doing that. We don't have to hate each other because your political views are different. You don't have to hate somebody because their gender identity or orientation is different. We need to spend more time understanding each other, and the only way you do that is if you actually demonstrate love for another human being. Because I guarantee you, the more that we can learn to understand each other, we might not agree with each other's political views, we might not agree with each other's lives or choices, but we will respect them as human beings and actually find ways to bring the difference to make something better. So what I actually hope is not diversity, equity, and inclusion, not impact. Like, I want to be a chief love officer and help people to remember how to love each other as families like we do outside of the workplace, in the workplace.
Well, if anyone is going to get that title, it's going to be you, Damien. I want to go to questions, because I know people in the audience have some questions. So if we get the mic over to the people with the hands up, that would be great. We've got a mic on this lane.
I'm excited about y'all's questions. Keep it real.
Thank you so much. Have you previously experienced imposter syndrome, and what have you done to, pull yourself out of that rut, or inspire yourself, big up yourself? What advice would you give people who experience imposter syndrome?
Okay, I'm experiencing imposter syndrome right now. This ain't my hood. I'm in y'all's hood. You know how many people have come up to me today and been like, so you're clearly American, after a couple of words. And I'm like, why? They're like, your accent. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Usually I'm in the States saying y'all's accent, but here I have an accent, right? So I'm experiencing some of it right now, hoping that what I'm talking about and the examples that I've shared are actually landing. So I want to be real. But yes, no matter how I am blessed and God blesses me to quote unquote ascend, the more that I ascend, the more I am alone in these rooms with people who I think sometimes are looking at me like, oh, you're here because they needed a diversity hire. You're here because we needed to diversify this organization. How do you deal with that? You lay out the welcome mat for it. It's gonna happen. It's normal. It's regular. You lay out the welcome mat. You say, hi, imposter syndrome. I see you. I understand why you're here. I also understand that half of the room also has imposter syndrome. Now, I would always welcome imposter syndrome. I actually think it's healthy. It keeps you from becoming too arrogant. The balance to find is welcoming it in, but not letting it thwart you. Not over analyzing the things that are going to come out of your mouth, but remembering that there might be times when it may have been an initiative to get more women or to get more transgender individuals into a room. That's okay. I'm glad those initiatives exist, because without them, people wouldn't pay attention. Don't get caught up on that. Just remember that you're the person that they chose out of all the people they could have chosen out of those groups. Spend more time remembering that you're the person that got in that door, and then spend more time trying to kick open that door for other people to come in and letting them know that they belong in that room.
We've got a couple of questions at the front.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Damien.
Afternoon.
Ian. How are you doing? I'm Shella.
Hi, Shella.
How you doing?
Good.
You don't have imposter syndrome. You own this. Own it.
Love.
My question is this. I'm a principal business architect in government, right? I wanted to know if you're working in a very mature organization, right? It's established.
Yes.
It's not inclusive,
Right.
okay? What would be your 3 things to start to think about how to achieve inclusivity?
3 things that I would do, or 3 things?
What would you do, Damien?
Wait, am I you in this organization, or am I part of the majority who is oblivious?
Oh, yeah, let me give you a profile. You're a leader, okay? You are you in this organization. You can make changes. But you're coming in brand new. And it's mature.
Yeah.
And it's old school.
Yeah.
And it's white.
Yeah. Okay. So, and a lot of people won't tell you this, okay?
Yeah.
They will tell you, come in, kick that door down, and just throw it right in people's faces. That doesn't work. And you are one person. Unless you're the CEO or the chair of the board of that organization, where the buck kind of stops with you, you can't do that. And that actually isn't inclusive in and of itself. Oftentimes in our journey to inclusion, we end up excluding people. We go into an organization that is mature, and instead of saying, how did the organization get here, and what does inclusion mean to this mature organization, what's the way that they tap into it best, we just say, oh, this is messed up. I'm gonna tell you how to fix this. That's not inclusive. You're setting yourself up to fail. So the number one thing that I would do is I would spend some time first observing and understanding how do things get done, number one. Number two, what's the love language in that organization? Sometimes the love language is new client growth. Sometimes it's media impressions. Sometimes it's just straight bottom line. I'd be saying, out of all the things I want to do around inclusion, how can I wrap them up? Like when I feed my dog medication, I put it inside some peanut butter because I know he likes peanut butter. Figure out what the peanut butter is in your organization and put that medication inside of there and let it be a slow drip over time. And then the third thing I do, because even if it's a mature organization, as you look around, think about a stakeholder map. Let's say there's 30 people on the leadership team. 2 of them are feeling the same way you do. They've just been waiting for somebody to figure out how to put that medication in peanut butter. So find those allies in the organization, and y'all slowly but surely work it in using the love language of the people who are also in that organization. That's what I would do.
3 things, 3 gems. I'm getting rushed here, but I'm going to do one more question. Quick question and quick answer.
Hi, Damien. Hi. Oh, do I have to stand up?
Where are you?
I'm here. Hello.
Who's here?
Oh, okay.
Oh, hi.
Hello, Damien. My question is, actually I have 2 questions. So how did you get the confidence to become the leader you are today? And what advice would you give to a future leader?
Confidence. Again, what you see here most certainly is confidence. I also have lots of insecurities. I have insecurities about wearing these big old parachute pants that I've never worn before. And I'm like, I really like them, but are other people gonna like them? And I'm like, well, I don't really care. If I was that confident, I would never think about it, okay? So I wanna just be clear. The person you're seeing on stage also is insecure in many ways and am on a constant journey of learning.
Bro, they look good. They look good. They look good.
They look good? Thank you, brother. But like, one of the ways, and this may seem counterintuitive, I got into a lot of trouble as a kid. I've always had a very healthy disdain for authority. And so I spent a lot of time getting kicked out of school, behavioral issues, and that made me very comfortable being on the principal's bench and having the other kids walk by me and laugh. I'm also an only child. And so I've had to entertain myself in many cases and be okay without having lots of different points of input. And then a lot of it is just trial and error. Again, every single person in this audience is a human being. And so when you are challenged with confidence, I think I need you to know everybody else is here too. So the quicker that you can get on stage and say, I'm not sure if I was insecure about these pants. Guess what happened? You put it out there. You're no longer hiding it. other people hear it and they're like, damn, I was kind of insecure about what I was wearing today too. Glad to know there's someone else. And now it's already out there, right? And then for future leaders, I would say, be careful with that term, future leader. We are in a day and age with social media, with technology, where the leaders are now. A lot of times we think future leader has to be associated with a title or a level or an age. Forget all of that. Our leaders are right now. I'm looking at a leader who decided, who had the courage to stand up and ask a question. And so my answer to you, the best thing I can tell you as I think about what I think is a large demographic in this room, is there is leadership with a little L. There's the big L that everybody thinks about, and then there's the little L. Ask yourself, one, how have I been a leader? And two, how can I be? And stop thinking that it needs to be a future state. It's right now. Okay? All right.
Powerful advice, powerful advice. Damien, every time we do this, every time we speak, we could do this for hours. I want to thank you. You talked about diamonds earlier, you've dropped gems, you've dropped so much advice. I want to thank you for being here. And thanks everyone for listening. Take care and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks y'all.